So now that we've created a basic environment, we're going to look at creating an actual game. Now for this game, we're going to be creating a top-down shooter that's essentially a survival game where enemies spawn in and you sword fight them until they can no longer sword fight. So for this, we're going to need a couple of things, but first and foremost, we're going to need a character. So I'm going to click on the content button and I'm going to create a new folder that's called Blueprints. And within this folder, I'm going to create a new blueprint class, and this blueprint class is going to be based on a character. Now, a character is a type of pawn that has a whole bunch of extra stuff in it to make your life significantly easier. I can't stress that enough, and I'm stuck going through what those actually are. Now, to be clear, a pawn is an actor that can be possessed and receive input from a controller, but a character has the following. So I'm going to call this KG for knight game, because we're going to be a knight. KG character base. Okay, let's double click on this and let's have a look at what is in the character. So within a character, we have the following. You've got a capsule component, which represents your character's collision. So this is going to be blocking the world, and the base of that is what you're standing on. You've got an arrow component that's used to determine which way forward is in a pinch, in a situation like right now where I clearly have no character. A mesh, which is the skeletal mesh that the character has. So this is going to house information regarding what kind of animations it's using, as well as the skeletal mesh itself, so what it actually looks like. And then finally we have a character movement component, which is an incredibly useful component that's built in that automatically handles a massive chunk of standard bipedal movement. So let's actually get this going, and let's get something up and running quickly. Before I import a character, I'm going to do something that's going to be a little ugly, but that's okay. I'm going to add a static mesh component purely for the sake of us being able to see the character. So don't fret too much about which static mesh you make it, because this will get deleted in no time. For the time being, I'm just going to set it up as something incredibly obvious, so as it moves around I can see it. And I'm going to set it to be this wooden barrel. This is our character. Okay, again, it doesn't really matter what you set it as long as it's something that I can see. Now, the other thing I want you to do is, on this static mesh that you've added, we're going to just double check, there we go, typed in the word nav, and I'm going to disable can ever affect navigation, because I don't want this box to actually block navigation. So, compile and save, and for the time being, that's all we're actually going to touch. I'm going to get this, and I'm going to drop the KG character base into the map, and it's going to just sit here. And it should be popping up and floating above the ground because the character itself has this section beneath it that is where its legs would normally be. Now, we've added a character into the world, so the next thing that I need to add is some navigation. So I'm going to go to my modes and I'm going to type in nav. And you'll see here that we have nav mesh bounds volume. Now essentially this is a volume that lets me set it up so that anything within it is going to be in a navigable radius. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I've dropped this into the center of the world, okay? And I'm now going to set this to be 5,000 that way, so 5,000 on the X, a little bit bigger than that on the, oh, no, okay, it looks like that's just enough. So 5,000 on the Y. And I'm going to go 500 on the Z. Now, with that in place, I'm going to hit P, and P shows me paths. And you'll see that it's generated this green section over our map. Now, what this green section represents is the region that any AI within this environment could theoretically navigate to. So this has gone through and automatically worked out how to get something running around it. And you may be sitting there going, yeah, but how did it work all that out? This is something that we're not going to cover too much today, but in the project settings, and then go to navigation system and navigation mesh, you have different settings that you can use for this navigation system to run. And a big chunk of that is actually putting in the defaults so that it knows, oh, there is a small, medium, and large character type in the game, and it works out where large characters can fit, where medium characters can fit, and where small characters can fit. Now, in our situation, we've gone ahead and we've just dropped this into the world, and it's given us our collision. So, what's next? Well, next is going to involve us actually setting this up to have some sort of brain. Now, To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my content browser, Blueprints, and I'm going to right click and create another new blueprint. And this one is going to be an AI controller. Now it's not there, it's under all classes. So go to here and I want you to create an AI controller, okay? Select, and I'm going to call this KG AI controller base, okay? Now, our AI controller is essentially the brain that pilots the character pawn. So this is going to be the brain that steers the body. Now you may be wondering, well, why do we split the body from the brain? And the reason for that is, I want you to picture this. The controller possesses the pawn, okay? So the controller possesses the character. Now imagine a game where I had a character that could run through the world and jump into a car. Now the character, when it's told to move forward, it moves forward in a certain way. And when the car is told to move forward, it moves forward in its own way. Now what we would do in a situation where I put myself in the car is, when I reached the car, I would tell my character to play an animation to get in the seat. At which point I would unpossess my character and I would now possess the car. So my controller would continue to just feed in the information that says, hey, move forward. And the car would say, well, when I move forward, I do it this way. Okay, so that's why we have that split. Now in this situation, I'm going to open up my character base and I'm going to add some very, very, very simple functionality to just get it up and running. So I'm going to go to my event graph and I'm going to create a custom event. Okay, and this is just going to be called Wander. Now when the Wander function is called, what we're going to do is we're going to get our controlled pawn. So we're going to find our body. Now, if we have a body, and we almost always should, but just in case, we're going to check if it's valid, and if we have a body, I'm going to go AI move to. And you'll see that we have this function called AI move to that I can call. Okay? Now, when I drag off of this, every now and then you'll get this thing where it'll give you a world context object that pops up. This isn't actually what we want. I want to connect this to the pawn instead. And when I compile, it'll still run fine. Now, if I get the pawn, there's a nice little function whereby I can, first off, get the actor's location, which returns a vector, giving me its location in world space. But then I can drag off of that. And there's a fantastic function I can use called getRandomPoint in navigable radius. See that? Now this is a very useful function because what it does is, given a radius, it finds a location and then gives me that as a destination. I'm sure you can see where this is going. So all I need to do now is I'm going to tell this to every 5 seconds wander again, okay? And to do that, all I need to do is I'm going to drag off of this and set timer by event. So when the game first starts up, it's going to wait 5 seconds and then it's going to call wander after 5 seconds. Now, if I set this to looping, it's now going to call wander every 5 seconds, okay? So this is just a very, very basic thing. Compile, save, and then in my character base, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go class defaults, and I'm going to type in the word controller, and see the setting that says AI controller class? We're going to set that to be a KG AI controller base. Compile, save. Okay? Now, we've got our barrel person in the world just over here. I'm now going to go here and click simulate, and I'm going to watch. Now remember, we have 5 seconds before it does anything. Oh, and there it goes. It ran off to that location. And if I give it another 5 seconds, it's going to move to another random location. And after 5 seconds, it'll continue to do the same. Congratulations, you've just created the world's most simple AI. But that's okay, it gives us a foundation to build from. So, coming up next, let's work out how we can actually set this up with some sort of character. Afterwards, we'll start to give it more intelligent behavior, and finally, we'll let ourselves control our character for ourselves. So, let's move on to the next step.